Good evening. This is the June 16th, 2025 special meeting of the Brookline School Committee. We are here tonight to interview two of our four finalists for interim superintendent. Just a word to our committee members who are here, and some will be joining soon. We are in open session now, going to go through the questions that we have that Bob sent and make any changes or additions, amendments that we'd like to those questions. We will interview the candidates back to back. There'll be no deliberation today. We'll deliberate after the conclusion of our two candidate interviews tomorrow. So, Bob, thank you for sending around this draft. Are there any committee comments on the questions that Bob sent around? Dr. Liu, do you have a comment?
My one comment would be that there was a question that had been part of the screening round that I think is also important to ask in this round, which was what has been your approach to recruiting and retaining educators of color? I thought that elicited some pretty useful responses.
Yeah. So I'll add that as question 12.
Betsy's adding now, Bob. You don't have to add. Betsy's now. She has the document and she's going to add that one. So you'll add that as 12, move 12 to 13.
Move 12 to 13, okay. And Andy, just one more time, will you tell me that? What has been
your approach to recruiting and retaining educators of color?
Any other comments on the suggested questions? Yes.
Hi, thanks. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late, so if I'm repeating, just let me know. I would love to see, and I don't have wording, and I will defer to Bob and the rest of the committee on this, but I would love to see more questions that get at some more of number one. So understanding not only your life's journey, but your approach towards teaching and learning.
I feel like 1, 2, and 3, and 5, that we have some.
Oh, great, okay.
In there, right? And then
are we still selecting, was it 9 questions out
no,
of
we're
the?
doing
Okay,
all of these.
okay,
And then the one that Andy just added, Betsy's going to update the sheet and she'll print it.
Okay.
And then we're just going to go around the room. Question, assuming people are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And Mariah's here.
And Mariah has her hand up. Mariah?
There's some questions about financial challenges and such, but and some questions about staffing. And I don't know if it makes sense to have one specifically talking about, and maybe it doesn't, but I'm just throwing out there the situation which we're in, which I find it to be, given the sort of overlap of these two, it's kind of a turnaround situation. So I don't have a question articulated, but I'm just wondering if the confluence of those two factors is more than each individual factor.
Can you try to articulate a question, Mariah?
Let me think about it for a moment and come back.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a general question, which is, are we allowed to do follow-ups that arise because
No,
of
so-
the candidate's response?
We should stick, so we'll stick to the same questions for all candidates like we did in the prelim. So no additional questions. If there is a very specific and narrow follow-up, yes, but not something that's going to take us down a winding path that's outside the question.
Okay.
Val, how long are the interviews? An hour or 45?
We should aim for 45 so that we can have a transition period between the.
Because we're not going to deliberate tonight, right?
Correct.
So, okay, that gives us a little bit of freedom.
We have a little bit of flexibility, but
good.
not a ton.
I assume the reason that we wouldn't do follow-ups is because we're trying to offer the same experience to all four
Correct.
candidates.
Yeah.
So
And it worked well for us in the prelim screening committee to be able to compare apples to apples to apples to apples.
I have my question articulated for
Okay.
your consideration. Have you
go.
been in a district with both personnel and budget challenges as Brookline has? What areas did you prioritize? What was your biggest win?
I'm good with that question. Other people?
Can you say it one more time, Mariah?
Sure. Have you been in a district with both personnel and budget challenges as Brookline has? What areas did you prioritize? What was your biggest win? I can text it to Betsy if that's handy.
That'd be great.
So if
Okay.
we have that, do we still need question 8, which is just the fiscal half of that?
That's what I was going to ask.
Well, Mariah wanted them separate and together.
Okay, so it's intentional that we're asking about fiscal stuff twice, once on its own and once in conjunction with personnel issues?
I think it's more, I view it more as a question about how do you prioritize when you're facing multi-system issues. I think, is that,
Yes,
Mariah, the way?
I think
yeah.
that's exactly it. It's like that there's just a lot going on here.
Where did you put that one, Betsy?
You tell me, so,
I think after 8 and before 9. Any other suggested?
Sorry, two things. One is, maybe this one first. That leaves us like 3 minutes per question.
About right, yeah.
Do we feel like that's enough?
That's what we're
Okay.
essentially asking for, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you remind me what the thinking is behind asking some of the same questions from the first interview? Because I know you mentioned that.
Yeah,
And we discussed it.
only a couple of us heard those responses, and so some of them elicited a lot of really good information about the candidates, and so, Bob and I, in talking about it, thought that some of them make sense for people generally to hear responses. In open session, those were obviously executive session, and only a
Oh,
couple of
right.
us heard them, so, a lot of you haven't heard them, and they've never been sort of heard by the public, so.
Thank you.
So Betsy, you're going to print out the new
I am, are we all set?
third?
Donna had one, Jesse, Suzanne, Sarah, we're good?
Can I ask a question, Val?
Yeah.
Procedurally, is one person reading them or are we being assigned them?
So we were going to go around the room, but I think maybe Carolyn's not here yet. I don't necessarily want to worry if somebody's not here. So when Betsy prints it out, maybe we'll just assign numbers and then we can add Carolyn if she arrives.
Listen, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah,
7,
but-
8.
And Mariah. So let's,
So we have 8 of us.
I'm just as happy to not ask questions since I'm not there. I'm happy to
Okay.
listen. Yeah, that'll make it easier.
We'll go in order. I'll start 1, 2. How's that?
that's fine. Sounds good. All right. Betsy's going to print out a new copy for us.
I have a drink. I'm good. Thank you. Betsy, you're the best.
How are you?
Hi.
Did you see, well, maybe you didn't see because you're busy, but I got a really nice note about one of the candidates.
Okay, I saw that. I got other notes that concern, but I mean,
No, from,
that,
that's what I'm saying, maybe we can reserve some good things and push out individually to community members.
we're just gonna
Yeah.
do the process and make a decision. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if people from the outside sort of do their research or whatever, Hi, Carolyn.
Okay, so we're not starting at 5:45 again.
We did start. We went
you
over the
already
questions.
did it?
Yeah, we're all set.
I missed it, because I was sitting in School Street traffic. Remind me not to come to Brookline Village at all the entire summer. School Street is gonna be the place. So you can talk
Recording in progress.
I'm sorry?
at 5:45 and you went over.
Yeah. We added a few. What was added?
I mean, something that wasn't on the email that you sent?
Right. Yeah, it's a couple people. So we added question.
And 13
9 is new,
and 13.
and 13 is new. Sorry?
And who suggested 9 and 13? Was that like here?
13 was Andy. 9 was Mariah.
What's the process gonna be when we're talking about that?
What's that?
How do we do this?
What do you have? You're gonna go around? I'm gonna do 1, you're gonna do 2.
All right. Welcome back. And we're going to give you a minute to settle in.
Thank you. Let's move my little stuff here. Oh, more water. You people are the best.
Do you have some water? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We have one member. Thank you for being with us. You are the first of our interviews between today and tomorrow, so thank you. We're going to go through introductions quickly as we go with our questions.
Okay.
And we're going to, some of us you know from the original prelim screening, and some of us you'll meet for the first time. We won't do any deliberation. We're just going to meet with you. Betsy will then walk you out, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to start with Bob on that end, and we're going to go through with our questions.
Okay, I'm Bob Weintraub. I'm co-chair of the search committee, and I was a high school principal in Brookline for 20 years.
I remember that.
Me too. Your first question is, please talk to us about your life's journey.
Oh, my favorite question.
Why don't you introduce yourself with your name
Oh,
and
yes.
your, yeah.
My name is Maureen Benenda. I'm currently the engine superintendent in East Hampton until June 30th, and currently I'm transitioning. New superintendent, Dr. Michelle Balch from Springfield, into her role as a new superintendent in East Hampton. So my journey has been exciting for me. I never once wished that I chose another profession. So this is my 49th year. I've spent my whole life really dedicating myself to the students that I served. I was in Worcester Public Schools for 46 years. So I started as a special education teacher for what they're life skills students. So they're students that like self-contained at that time, and that was in 1976. And then from there, I 2.5 hit Worcester, and I went from being an elementary school teacher to a high school teacher. And that was, at first I said, I'm afraid of those kids, I don't want to go there. But I went to the high school and I loved it. I spent the rest of my career at South High Community School in Worcester. I was a special education teacher. Let me just go back for a little bit, that when I graduated from college, that first job as life skills teacher, it was a bilingual special ed classroom. And the principal said, "You speak Spanish?" And I said, "No, 7 years of French." And he said, "Good enough." And so I went back to Worcester State University and took Spanish, and I taught for 2 years English and Spanish. So when I arrived at South High Community School, all my students were deaf, and I did not know sign language. So I'm back to Worcester State again and learned sign language. And so the reason I tell you that is that, like, my view of things is if you don't have the skills, then you have responsibility to learn them. So I still sign. The deaf program was at South High Community School for many years, no longer there. So I still sign, and I end up teaching sign language and adult education also at one time. So I got to the high school. I was a special education teacher, also total service. And I really wanted to get my master's as what they called then a generic special ed teacher. That job actually never came to be in the list of, how DESE does it. So, but it kind of translates to an inclusion teacher. So from there, I became a special ed department head. I spent 12 years as assistant principal, spent 8 years of principal at South High Community School, 6 years as superintendent of schools. During that time, as Bob would know, high school are exciting places. I was the varsity field hockey coach for 12 years, the cheerleading coach for 12 years, the variety show director, the sophomore class advisor, and we had a pool and I was a lifeguard. So like, I really got to experience, and this is my student, Jared Alexander. I couldn't believe that he saw I was coming. He came today. So we can probably, right? Isn't that so great that I didn't even know he was coming? It's been how many years since we saw each other? 20 probably. Yes. So he can verify that I'm telling the truth about all these things. We had a pool. And I also, in the summers, I ran the sports camp there for youth. So I've had so many opportunities in this field of education, and always my focus was, what can we do to help kids? So then I retired in 2022 from the Worcester Public Schools, and I was only retired 5 weeks, and I was in St. Martin actually, and I received a phone call from Quabog School District asking me if their superintendent had got a late appointment and was moving to Leicester, whether I would come out and be their interim superintendent. So I went to Quabog, and as a regional school district, I had no experience with the budget process. Everything else is pretty much the same, but the budget process. And I learned that budget process, and I totally enjoyed being at Quabog Regional. In April of the year that I was finishing up in Quabog, MASC called, and there was a situation that occurred in East Hampton, and they asked me if I would consider going there. So I went to East Hampton, and it's the smallest city in Massachusetts, beautiful little artistic place at the bottom of Mount Tom, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it there. So they asked me to stay a second year, which usually DESE does not allow you to stay a second year, but thankfully they let me stay a second year. So that's been my journey.
All right, thank you. Carol?
Hi, thank you for being here. Oh, sorry, my mic. I'm listening intently to you. I forgot I have to turn my mic on. I'm Carolyn Thal. This is my second year on the school committee. I've lived in Brookline 15 years. I have had 2 kids go through the schools. I still have one at Brookline High School. And welcome. Thank you for being here. So I am question number 2. Schools are about learning. Please talk about your own intellectual development and important influences in your own learning over time.
Sure. So I guess I would start with the fact that for our family, the fact that my grandfather was one of 13 kids, and he lived at the bottom of a hill, and he looked up at the College of Holy Cross. And my grandparents are immigrants from Ireland, so my mother was the first generation here. And he said to his parents, "I'm going to go to that school." And they said, "No, you're not. You're the oldest of 13 kids. You're going to work." And he said, "No, I'm going." And the reason I mention it to you is that he did go. How did he get there? If the Jesuits ever knew this, they probably wouldn't have let him in. But he was the guy in the pool hall that you had to beat. And he saved that money, and he paid his tuition, and he went to Holy Cross, and he graduated in 1917. And my father then went to Holy Cross. So the reason I mention it is that education became a very important part for our family. It changed the course of where we all went, because my grandfather went there. He set those high goals for us, and we were always all expected that we go to college. My own professional development is that I try to learn as much as I can, not only in educational, but also like in the theaters and in the arts. 17 years ago, Hanover Theater opened up in Worcester. It's a great little theater. And I really wanted my students to know a lot about the theater because I thought they'll never have that opportunity. And so I thought I have to learn about the theater too. So we volunteered, we signed up and volunteered. So there was about 4 faculty members, myself, and a group of about 20 students. And we became the ushers for the theater. So you had to do 2 shows a month. So we did 2 shows a month and we learned about the theater. I'm still the head usher at Hanover Theater 17 years later. And know a lot about the theater, but the most important thing is that our students got opportunities that they never would have got. And so through trying to learn myself about it, I also provide that opportunity for our students. I've taught a lot of classes. I've taught courses at Worcester State University. I've taken courses at Worcester State University. When I was in 1992, 91, we had a philanthropist called Jacob Hyatt that lived in Worcester. And he was very involved in really wanting to provide professional development for teachers and administrators. So every year they would pick one teacher and one administrator, and he would pay 80% of your salary to go to Harvard Graduate School of Education. And the district gave you your whole salary. So you got to go to Harvard and only had to pay 20%. I received that year the teacher that got to go to Harvard University. And so I received my second master's in education from Harvard University. So I'm always looking for ways to learn. I like to read. I'm a reader. So I like to read, not just educational books, but also many other books. I have a daughter who's also a teacher, 13 years now in the Worcester Public Schools, and we're always having these conversations about education, what are good practices, and how are we supposed to support students. So by her getting her professional development, I also get it because we have these very long conversations about what is right for our schools.
Hi, my name is Andy Liu. I'm a first-year teacher of math at a public high school in Lynn, and I was on the initial screening committee and very glad to see you again. I really like this next question. It is, please talk about special moments of accomplishment in your professional life as a teacher and school leader.
Okay, so I'll start with as a teacher. When I first took over the life skills classroom, that was in 1976. Chapter 766 had just been passed, and so that allowed for special ed students to come to school and receive all the services that they needed. I have 2 special ed brothers myself, so for myself, that was a really personal reason that I initially went into special education. And the students at that time, they didn't teach them how to read. So it was the idea that special ed students couldn't read. And so I taught them to read because I taught my brother to read. So those kids, when they left after those 2 years in my classroom, they were readers because I thought it was very important for them to learn those skills. So that was a great accomplishment for me, going back all the way down there to know that you can provide a skill that maybe nobody ever thought, or the students themselves thought, or their families thought that their special ed kids could do. And so many parents were so appreciative that for the first time ever, their children were reading. So I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of all the accomplishments that my students have really accomplished through the work that I've done with them. We took kids on field trips. We fundraised. We have a marching band at the high school that I was principal at, and it's a superb marching band. And they really wanted to go to Washington DC on July 4th and be able to walk down Constitution Ave. So one school gets selected every year from each state to be able to go down. So we applied and we had to, do a performance on video and we made it. But we needed to raise $85,000 in order to pay for uniforms, the hotel, the bus there. And we raised $85,000 in 1 year from families that really, and community that really didn't have a lot of money to give us, but we did it. And I went to Washington DC with them, and my job was to spray, because it was like 100 degrees on July 4th, and my job was to spray all the kids with water as they're playing the instruments and going down the street. But I have to tell you that feeling of accomplishment for me was what that meant to those kids, that we were able to fill that dream for them, and to see them marching down the street with new uniforms, a high school in the middle of an urban center. And here we are, in Washington, DC, marching down the street with the best in the country. So that's a memorable experience for me. I mean, I have so many stories of student success. Other stories are, we have a lot of students from many different countries at South High Community School. As a matter of fact, we are the second most diverse high school in Massachusetts. And so I really wanted to improve the college career process so that when our students got into college, we wouldn't have, there's the national figures that first year of college and how many kids really don't stay. So when I became superintendent, I went for that grant, a college and career readiness grant, and also Worcester, while I was superintendent, was amongst the few school districts that got the early college program. So I started the early college program, like there's well over 400 kids in the early college program now. Another thing that I always wanted to do was, when I became superintendent, was I wanted to start honors gifted programs in each of the high schools. So there are 9 high schools in Worcester. There are 6 big high schools. And so at South High Community School, we have what we call a Guided Scholars Program. It starts in grade 6. The kids are selected, 50 per class are selected. It used to be that you also had to play an instrument because we wanted to keep our band going. So, you would also have play the instrument if you were accepted into the Guided Scholars Program. So that is a 6 through 12 program. I didn't start that program. That program began when I was a teacher. However, I expanded programs like that to the other schools. So for example, Hanover Insurance is a big company in Worcester. And I went to them and I said, hey, how would you like if I call this program Hanover Program to pay for everything that this group needs at Burncoat High School? And they said, sure. So we have the Hanover Academy now at Burncoat, and those are honors kids that have a special program for high achieving kids. At Doherty, there was already a program, but we expanded it, and it's an engineering and science academy. And then at North High School, we expanded the health and science. So I'm proud of the fact that we're able to meet the needs of so many kids, that we're able to close the gap for our students. Another thing I'm proud of is the personal relationships that I established with students, which last over time, because they understand that I truly care about them and that we're going to be able to provide for whatever they need. So for example, I'm not sure if you have Posse Scholars here, but it's out of Boston, and a Posse Scholar is someone that's selected by this group that funds the Posse Scholars. And these students are scholars, but they get to go to a series of colleges for free. And so we had a lot of our students become Posse Scholars. The only part of it is that you have to pay room and board, but everything else is paid for you. But most of the Posse Scholars from here go south or to the west, and then their scholars come to our colleges. So we had several students that couldn't afford for room and board, and I was able to convince the presidents of 2 colleges that they were getting such a great deal with these students that they would help recruit for them future students, that I was able to get their room and board for free. So, I was proud of the fact that I was able to convince, and that it was so interesting. 4 years went by. Posse always has a celebration, and they bring a college president in to talk. And that particular time, the college president was from Bucknell. Okay, that's where my student went. And his speech was about my student and about how she sang at all their national anthems and all their games, and what a scholar she was. So I waited until he was done talking, and I went to him and I said, I don't know if you remember our conversation 4 years ago, but you're the one that made that happen. And he was so thankful, that we had this conversation about everybody's responsibility to help students get their dreams made.
Thank you. Educational equity is a term that we hear in conversations in and about schools. Can you please talk about what this term means to you?
Sure. I think I worked my whole life for equity, and before it even became something to do. There's also I want to say that I also worked with health equity, which is really combined with educational equity. So basically, it means that you give each student what they need to be successful. And so if that's, offering courses, offering opportunities, helping them to get transportation to a job, you do that so that all students get what they need to be successful. One of the big issues that I had at South High Community School is that we had a lot of students that had inequity with food in their house, so there wasn't enough food. So we started the first food pantry in a Massachusetts high school, and that food pantry is still there. And to talk about how you coordinate that work, you can't start a pantry and not be able to have kids, whenever they need the food, to have it there, because the first time it's not there, they won't come back. So what do? Hanover Theater. We partnered with Hanover Theater. There's 280 ushers. So every show, I would post a list of what the ushers need to bring. To this day, it doesn't cost anything to run that food pantry in the high school. It's still being run. And how is it financed? Through the ushers at Hanover Theater. The same thing for clothing. We had clothing insecurity, inequity with how to get clothes. So we started a very, very large clothing pantry in the high school. It's called Andy's Attic. And because we wanted kids also to learn about the work, I made it a career pathway. So the students that are learning to sort the clothes and fill orders are also learning how marketing works and how business works. And now they're connected to courses at Worcester State University. So it's really all about looking for the resources and connecting all the different resources so that all kids get what they need.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mogtotter. I'm a 25-year veteran teacher and now on the school committee for 2 years. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I do have a cousin who lives in Worcester and has kids in the school system, so thank you.
Good. We'll have to find out who that is after.
Different last name, but how do you work to address academic and opportunity gaps while pursuing excellence for all students? Share examples from your experience that would inform this work in Brookline.
So I think the first thing you do, because I know you have the METCO kids that also come here, and at the first interview, it was shared that was something that you really want to focus on, the gap there and how to lessen the gap. And so I know this is a different question, but I just wanted to say some of that information that I said before, because I think that it's the same, very similar. And that is, you have to use data, right? So you look at the data. If there are students that are having difficulty, if there's gaps, you need to look at what skills that they have not received, and then you have to put the interventions as needed for those students. There are still, for example, our Goddard scholars at South High Community School. they, on some of the math MCAS, they kept getting the same thing wrong. And these are Goddard scholars that take geometry and algebra 2 in ninth grade, right? And so by 10th grade, they're taking pre-cal, they're taking trig. So we were trying to figure out, like, what is it? So we looked at exactly what was it. And these were Goddard scholars, so you would be saying, like, what, there can't be any gaps here. But yeah, there was some gaps in that they couldn't remember decimals, fractions. So we had to go back and reteach that for them. So I think that even scholars can have gaps because it's uneven. For example, when we started the Goddard Scholars Program, it was just for kids that had high scores in math and science. And then we found that these same kids that had really high scores in math and science, they were struggling in some of the English and social studies classes. So, how did we then work to increase their skills and to bridge that learning for them? So it's looking at the data, looking, what we need to do for interventions and providing those supports.
Thank you. Hi, Maureen. I'm Suzanne Federspiel. This is my 9th year on the school committee. Congratulations on your election.
Congratulations to you.
And I'm a retired educator and administrator. And I will just say my daughter went to Clark University, so I've spent many a time in Worcester. We have a special place. My question is, if you are selected for this position, you will have to select some important members of your administrative team, such as the Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning and Director of the Office of Special Services. What might your team look like?
Okay. Well, I've done that before. When I became superintendent of the Worcester Public Schools, I had to select my, deputy superintendent. I also, in Worcester, we have what you call quadrant managers. The district is broken up into 4 quadrants, geographical quadrants. And there were 2 that retired. And so I only had the funding for 1 more. And then eventually I got the funding for another. So I also had to select who were going to be the managers, the quadrant managers. And then, of course, there's always principals that retire or, may take other positions somewhere else. And so also, and, there were there's 55 schools in Worcester. And, at any one time, we might have to replace 7 or 8 principals. So, basically is, you post the position, you do interviews similar to this, and then pick the person that you think is, has the qualifications to do the job. As far as, I think that person that you were just talking about, the last one, that must be like special ed and L, is that right? Or just special ed? Special ed? Special services. And Ls, right? So I also, the special education director, I did not have to replace that person. And the L person, I had to find a new director of L. So really, I looked at the qualifications of each of the people, and I looked at how I thought they would fit into the Worcester Public Schools, the culture, the district there, and had a lot of personal conversations upon first hiring them, so that we were on the same page. So that communication about always being on the same page, and like how do we see this work going together? What are the goals that are being set for us by the school committee? What are the expectations? And then how do their skills work so that we're able to achieve those goals? When I went to Quabog, I always say that I was going to advertise, just hire me. I did all the jobs because there was so many people that weren't there. The finance manager had left. The special ed director had left. The payroll person went out on maternity leave. And there was no clerk to the school committee, so I was the clerk for the whole time I was there to the school committee. So, I understand a lot of these jobs, and therefore know really how to select who needs to go in the jobs. As far as the special ed and the L, I have a lot of experience in both those areas. When I was in Worcester, we had 5,000 special ed students and 8,000 Ls. And so you can't, work in Worcester and not know what the expectations have to be for working for those populations. In particularly, I have both a undergrad and master's in special ed, and I have my special ed administrator's license, both in Quabog and also in East Hampton. I was the mentor for the special education director. So, and in both cases, I had great special education directors. That is a job that really deserves a lot of respect because there's so much that you have to do, and there's so many financial decisions you have to make, like out-of-district placements, or is there another way that you can provide in-district support, and a lot of conversation with parents about, their IEPs and providing services. So I understand the special education job very well. I feel confident that I have had a great deputy superintendent when I was in Worcester. Didn't have one in Quabog, small district, and don't have one in East Hampton. However, I have suggested that the curriculum and the grant person move to that position in East Hampton once finances can support that. So I don't have any issues with that. I feel like I've hired so many people over the years, both as principal and then as superintendent. And I have to say that all my hires were good. We worked together, we made a difference, we worked for what's best for families, and received lots of compliments for the work that we did.
Thank you. Jesse?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yes, nice.
My name is Jesse Hefter. Lived in Brookline for 41 years. Married a Brookline girl, BHS graduate. I recently retired after a 35-year science and technology career at Verizon. And during that time, since I was based in Waltham, I did have the opportunity to go to many of the other places in Massachusetts, including Worcester, for many meetings, especially in the field with technicians. My wife has been still working 40 years now in SPED, and so we sort of breathe it at home all the time. And so it informs a lot of who I am. And I have 2 grandchildren in the elementary schools here at this point, too. Rising 6th graders, I guess you'd call it now. My question is the following. The town of Brookline is exploring a possible Prop 2.5 override in 2026. Tell us, please, about any experience you might have in this area and how you might work to build trust in the community to create support for such an override.
So I have never run an override. I was a victim of one, right? When it was 2.5 in Worcester, and I had to leave my elementary classroom and go to the high school, which in the end was the most wonderful thing that could have happened to me. However, I will say that the reason I became the field hockey coach and the cheerleading coaches, they were all cut, right? And the principal kept calling me up and say, hey, would you do this job? So I'm like, sure. So that's how I ended up with all the jobs. I was, 24 years old, and he kept asking me, will you do this job and that job? And I loved all those jobs, but it happened because those people in math and science and phys ed and art and music, they were all cut. And it was an awful feeling, for a school to lose so many great role models for students. And some of those people never came back, right? So hence the gap in the age of teachers in schools in Worcester. So I think I mentioned at my first one that I'm also on Worcester School Committee. So as far as an override, I look at it as running a political campaign. Very similar, you do door knocking, you have brochures that you put in people's doors. You give them, if they're there, you hand it to them, otherwise you put it in their door. You have to be very clear as to why you need the override. You can't say, as I said before, that it would be, there was, fraud. No, this happened because, there was too many special education, out-of-district placement, special ed transportation, truthful reasons as to why it happened, what would be lost for students if you don't have this override. And also, I think you could gain trust by also speaking to the Brookline residents that work in schools, right? Whether it be the cafeteria people or the teachers, whoever works in the Brookline Public Schools should be given the same story, that we need this override so that we can continue giving the services that you want for your kids. And then there's the social media platform, get it on their cell phones as it gets closer to the time of the override, a little message about, don't forget to vote today for the override. We need it for our schools. I don't know, in Worcester, we have a lot of those electronic boards that you can get messages across. If you can, put it on electronic boards, on billboards, so that everybody knows that there is going to be an override and that we really need everybody to come together to do it. Parent-teachers groups, on the fields for sports games, the conversation has to always be some part about this. We really need your help for the override.
Hi there, my name is Donna Perry. It's great to meet you. Thank you for being here. My question is, as you know, in Massachusetts, we're all faced with fiscal challenges. Please talk about your experiences in addressing these fiscal challenges.
So it goes, I guess, all the way back to being a teacher and not having, enough money to purchase the things that I wanted to purchase for my students, and finding ways to go out in the community and get those resources, to being a principal of a high school. And 1 year, 13 teachers were cut from my high school. So there was about 1,520 kids at that time. And because of budget cuts, this was obviously before we had the ESSER money, or this was before we had the SOA money, right? So there was just no money, and there were 13 positions cut from my school. And I didn't know, because I did the scheduling, how was I going to provide like basic English, math, science, social studies to the students. And Clark University had a master's in education program there, and they would train, they would be teachers, they came from everywhere. They got accepted to Clark University. They already had a degree, so it might be in English, math, science, social studies, or art, but they didn't have one. They weren't certified in education, so they went there for a full year, and I had a few that came to my school. So I went to the director and I said, can I have 13? I need 13 of them to come to my school. And I got 13 that came, and they taught those classes, right? So that was very effective. As a superintendent, and prior to SOA, there were, how we do it with budget is that we give each principal we call it budget allocation list. On one side is what they currently have, their paras, their teachers, everything that is in the budget for their school. And then on the other side, we ask what their wish list is. And they have to say it's first priority, second priority, and third priority. Then we get all those together and we sit down as the administrative team and with our chief financial officer and look to see like if we can at least do all first priority for schools. Sometimes we can't do that and we have to tell them that they can't have that. Sometimes we try to get book companies, for example, to let us pilot some books because those book curriculum is free for the year. So in some cases, we looked at evidence-based curriculum and we would get some free books or free curriculum for students to use. It's never easy when you have to cut. I find that to have those personal relationships with principals and to show them, look at this is what I got and this is what I have to do. This is, where we are. How can I help you to still be successful in your job and supports, knowing that I can't cover, what you've asked here. Right now in East Hampton, we have a budget shortfall. We're we had to close down all accounts in early March because special ed out of district costs have gone up, and there were unexpected students that moved into the district that had out of district placements, and the transportation for McKinley-Vento. We went from 1 to 6 homeless families, and as you know, with that transportation, it was like 185,000 on that, is that the schools aren't reimbursed for that. In October, that money will go to the city, right? I never understood that, but that's how it works. And then you can ask the city if you could have that 185,000, which I've suggested to the new superintendent, and we've talked to the mayor about it, and she's great. It's almost like we're now thinking that you have to have some type of contingency fund. So maybe the reimbursement for transportation in regional areas, or the McKinley-Vento. And then the other part is school choice, right? Sometimes you have to run your school on school choice students, right? So in East Hampton, we got, last year, 900,000 from school choice, and now have to bring it down to only 200,000 left in the account in order to make up for this, special ed placement. So budget is not my favorite. I mean, I love everything else about the job, but the budget part is really, sometimes it's grueling, because no matter where you are, and now I'm my 3rd district, right? There's just not enough money for what you really want to do for kids. And so you just have to be able to be honest with people, establish priorities, and maybe look for other resources if you can to pay for those things you just can't afford.
Mariah, you want to ask that question that you created? No.
Your
Okay.
turn, Bob.
Maureen, I just want you to know that my oldest daughter, graduated from Clark University.
Oh, another one.
And when my wife and I dropped her off at Clark, first day, and I was driving away from Clark, I started weeping, and I left a lot of tears in Worcester. But she had a great experience there. I understand Clark is struggling right now.
Clark and WPI have massive cuts.
Okay, question. Have you been in a district with both personnel and budget challenges as Brookline has today? What areas would you prioritize, and what was your biggest win?
So I think my greatest strength is being able to establish a positive culture in the central office, as well as positive culture in schools. I think that is necessary in order for everybody to be able to work together to find it out. So I'll give you an example. So when I became superintendent, I really wanted to know what it looked like to have every single person that worked for me in the same room. And that was 5,000 employees. So I talked to the DCU Center, and that's a big concert hall, and I didn't have any money, so I asked them if they could help me do it for free. And they said, actually, there was a bank down the way. So we went to the bank, and they said, yep, we'll give you $10,000 for you to do this. We like the idea. So we went to the DCU Center, and then it was the first day of school, and all teachers had a report to their schools, custodians, everybody, cafeteria workers, crossing guards. And then I asked the bus company, which was Durham Bus Company at the time, can you give me 90 free buses? And they said, what do you want the buses for? So, we're just gonna be trying out our routes. And I said, I want you to get all the people that work for the Worcester Public Schools in one place. So they donated the buses, and we got the buses. So we brought 5,000 people together at the DCU Center. It was the first time ever that we had all seen each other. And it was such an emotional thing to be able to see everybody there. But the power of it was, and we had a guest speaker, that was really a great guest speaker, talking about how the difference every single person makes to a kid, from the crossing guard that meets the child and crosses the street, to the bus drivers smiling when they get on. It was a beautiful speech. But the most important thing was the fact that we all recognized in that moment that every single person there picked one student to make a difference in their lives. We were going to be a powerful group. So we continued that on for the whole time I was superintendent, except for during COVID. And during COVID, we now had the Woosok Stadium in Worcester. So we broadcasted from the Woosok Stadium. And you know what ended up happening is that took on a life of its own. They asked if there could be a spirit award. So different schools would all dress up in shirts and, unique costumes. And then they went to can we decorate our buses? Let's have a bus award for the school that had the most decorated bus. So we did that. And what that really did was it brought the whole culture together. Like the message, I mean, you can give a message in an email, but this message you felt because you were all there together. So that's the same way, like when I went to East Hampton and they were suffering from bad press and, international people even sending them emails saying, not nice things to them. It was really necessary for me to spend that time building everybody up. And I can say we're proud of that fact that we did that now we're ready to go back and focus on the other things, the academics and that. As far as, so I have a lot of experience and I'm grateful that somewhere along the line, I learned how to do that, right? Somewhere in those 49 years, I became aware of how good leaders that I worked for brought together a school, brought together a classroom, and brought together a district, even a district with 25,000 students and 5,000 workers. And so I think the idea about building trust is the number one thing that you need to do. I think you have to have a sense of humor too. Like we try to laugh at least once a day, because there's a lot of stress that's happening in schools these days, and it's good to be able to tell a story that's true, that might be funny, or share an experience. As far as the budget goes, I've had obviously a lot of experience with budget. In Worcester, very different. You have a chief financial officer. You have a very large staff of people working in your grants office. So that management is through weekly forms that come to you. You look at the different budget, how much money is in grant, what's left over. It's constantly looking at where you are. In a place like Quabog, it's small, and obviously we work very strongly with they hired a company to come in to manage because it was difficult. It's difficult to find a chief financial officer, right? And so they hired a company that came in, and we worked actually with the company. And then we had really good chief financial people in East Hampton. And so I just work, every day. I'm like, did you find any money? I mean, that's what I say all the time, because we always want to be able to do other things, and obviously you can't if you don't have the funding. So I have a lot of experience with budget from a very large, over $450 million, which makes me feel like I'm a CEO of a big company, all the way down to 27 million. So that's my experience with budget.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Sorry. I lost my 10. Thank you. Number 10, in these tough fiscal times, how important are the fine and performing arts and career and tech education in your budget decision-making?
Okay, those are very important in my budget meeting, obviously with my connection to the theater, and the connection that I see for students, that I've seen for students, is that some of our high achiever math and science students were also very good at musicians, right? And so we want to be able to promote that. And also then there were struggling students that learned in the arts, and they became extremely successful in that area. So you know, in 2.5 in Worcester, that's what we cut. We cut the music and the arts. And you know what? After, you know, all these years, let's say the middle 80s, we're still trying to get back what we lost. So I'm not for cutting the arts, and I'm a, you know, strong proponent of college and career readiness. We left that out for such a long time in children's development, and we just expected that they knew that. And so, you know, there are so many careers that we don't even know are being developed every day, and we want our students to be able to know about them and get involved with that. So in Worcester, when we had the college and career innovation program, we actually applied for a grant through DESE. So it actually occurred to me after the last interview that so many grants that we have been able to get in Worcester because they put restrictions, like some place like Brookline may not be eligible for those grants, that we have had so many opportunities that a lot of districts never get because you're not able to apply for those grants. So, for example, the DESE had the Innovative Pathways program, and we were one of the first school districts to be able to get it. We partnered with a group called the 1-8 Foundation, and I don't know if you know them, but they're the most amazing. Joanna Jacobson is the person that's in charge of it. They are the most amazing foundation that I've ever worked with. They only pay for programs that are going to be 100% successful. So I was able to partner with them, and I carried that relationship to Quabog and now to East Hampton. And it's all because of that started in my work in Worcester, which was the Innovative Career Pathways. So I don't know if any of you know what that is, but basically it's an after-school program that students can go to, and there's a variety of pathways that they get to experience. And then they get their credentials in those areas. So not only are they, because I go to a comprehensive high school, not only are they taking AP classes early college, but now they have those credentials in those areas of job placement that they can use for their future. So I would not want to cut either of those and would look for ways in order for those to continue.
We have a couple more questions to get through, so we're going to move to Andy.
All right. Pardon me. As superintendent, who do you believe you work for, and how do you balance the various stakeholders to whom you're accountable?
So I work for the students, and as I said before, the school committee also elected to work for the students and the families. And what was the second part of it?
The second part was, how do you balance the various stakeholders to whom you're accountable?
So the various stakeholders would be the school committee. So obviously the school committee is the boss of the superintendent. So it would be having constant communication with the school committee as to what their goals are for the superintendent and also the schools. The strategic plan, you have a strategic plan, it's very clear, your goals are clear. So I would follow the strategic plan also. And then always have every decision that I've always made in these 49 years has always been with students at the center.
That was a fast, thank you. We'll be negotiating 6 contracts during FY26, so this coming school year. Could you tell us about your experience negotiating collective bargaining agreements, please?
So it's so amazing to me. Every time I get to a district, it's time to negotiate a contract. Isn't that amazing? So when I became superintendent in Worcester, I had 9 contracts that came to be negotiated. When I went to Quabog, I had 3, and we just had 3 in East Hampton. So I feel like I'm an expert at that job now. So I think it's important to talk about the relationship with unions when it comes to that. So I'm unique in that I was a member of the MTA, the NEA, and the local for 40 years. So I became a member of the union as a teacher. When I became principal, I continued to pay my dues. And the reason I did that was in case there was any extra legal, help that I needed. If I could still be a member of the union, they would provide that. I have never needed to call the union. As a teacher or as an administrator, I never took advantage of that, but I did receive a plaque that says lifelong member of the union because I was there for 40 years. Not everybody has that opportunity. It did not help with negotiations, though. I want to say that to you. I did say, remember, I got this plaque, and they're like, yep, and that was the end of that. That didn't help. I've never been to mediation, so we've really worked to try to solve the issues. I think it's important to have a good relationship with the union reps that are in the building, and also how the president of the union. In Worcester, the president of the union leaves the school district during their term there. It's a full-time position, and we pay their salary, and then the union gives them a little bit salary on top of it. And then when their time is up, we make sure that there's a position for them, back, because they left their position, whatever they were, in order to go to the union. In Quabog, they decided to go for a one-year contract at the time because of some budget challenges. So they're in negotiations again. And we just settled in October in East Hampton, and that was a 3-year contract. And the vice president of the union said, I'm a gift to any district. So I thought that was a really nice thing for the vice president of the union to say because of our work together.
Thank you.
We're wondering what your approach to recruiting and retaining educators of color is.
Okay, so, well, that has, I would have to say be my strength. I mean, I was at the second most diverse high school in Massachusetts. We had an international show that was not, like fabulous every year. At that school, we respected everybody's culture well before culture responsive work became the thing to do. We were doing it because that's what our students needed. It was a wonderful place to be. When I was moving on to be the superintendent, they had wanted me to go earlier, and I said I'm not leaving until my seniors leave. And one of my seniors said to me, you know what, Miss, I think the world should be more like us. Here we celebrate what everyone is alike, and we don't look at the differences. And I think that was such, a great testimony to listen from our students of color about how they felt wanted, valued. And another part that I also want to tell you is that we had some of our Latino students that weren't performing as well as the rest of our students, so there was a bigger gap. And so what we decided is to go to the churches. So my guidance counselor, Carmen Melendez, and I went to the Spanish churches, actually some of them right near Clark University, and we gave the homily. And the homily was really about the gifts that your children are born with, and how we have to partner together, and we'd like you to put your children in AP classes. So we were talking to parents who didn't even know what AP classes were. And so we had to speak to parents about, some of our parents worked 2 or 3 jobs, and the high school student was responsible for taking care of the younger children, cleaning the house, and making the meals. And so in order for their kids to achieve what we wanted them to, we had to ask that they cut down on some of that so that their child could take advanced placement. And the most interesting thing is when it was time to sign up for advanced placement, the first parents at the door were those parents from those churches that really understood what we said. So we offered for our students, some of our AP students, Latino students, they take AP classes, take the same class twice every day. And we would handpick the staff member. So it would be a staff member, who was an excellent teacher. And there were so many of them, but we handpicked for our L students. So they were EPL 3s, meaning they were emerging, right, learners. And we had Mr. Stowe teach the class called AP Human Geography. And we had the students take the class twice a day. And so what that meant is that there was one less class that the department head, he was a department head, could teach, so we had to make a way that somebody else would pick up that extra class. And what happened is that all those kids came up with a 3 or more there were 12 in that AP class. And we blasted that through the whole school, because what you want teachers to believe in, because sometimes you can think that, how is that student that's still trying to learn English and emerging going to be able to take an AP class? But that showed that with the right support, in this case, was 2 periods a day of that class, that could happen. So I have extensive experience with that. Been to, and it extended upon their graduation. I've been to more weddings, baby showers, parties at different cultural people's houses, just because we got such close relationship with the kids and their families that, they see me as an extended part of their family.
Thank you.
Maureen, it's the last one, and it's your question. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I mean, I just want to say that a comment is that, I love to work here. I've spent my whole life working in public school education. I'm a strong proponent of it. I believe that public education is what we need for every kid, so that it does, public education itself, if done right, closes the gap, takes care of equity, moves kids to be successful, which are our future leaders. So I appreciate coming back again to have this conversation. I hope that I've been accurate in answering your questions, and that you get to see that nothing really stops me when I really get an idea, what needs to be done for kids, and I will pursue it until it happens. So I appreciate the opportunity to do the journey again with all of you. And I also want to say that I really liked your questions. I thought that they got to the heart of the matter, and they were important for you to hear the answers.
Thanks so much.
And I want to thank Jared for coming. Yeah, discuss. Oh, if she had done. We gotta switch the water. You want to switch the water? Yes. Very interesting. Oh, was it interesting? I want you. I'm with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you, Maureen.
Thank you.
This one out. I'm sorry.
Just so you know, Dr. Cataldo, we are on our community television station already, broadcasting. We'll go to you to introduce yourself, and then we're going to just go around with the questions in the same format that we did with the screening committee in terms of alternating the questioning. Push the button, and when it's green, yes, correct. Yeah, so if you want to turn it on, get going.
It is now on.
Excellent. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Bob Weintraub, BJ. I think you know who I am.
Well, I wanted her to introduce herself first, Bob.
What?
We know who you are.
I know who you are too. So,
I know.
hi, I am BJ Cataldo, and I am a candidate for the interim superintendent here in the Brookline Public Schools. I have been in education for 44 years. I won't begin my story with what I began with the last time, but there is a reason why everybody pursues a field.
Go to the question.
Oh, that's all you needed was
yep.
my name. I am
Yep.
so sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
so excited to talk.
Dr. Cataldo, please talk about your life's journey.
Which I began already, I'm so sorry. So I shared earlier in my last interview, I will do a little bit of the same thing in that when I was a young person, I was 12 years of age and I was out at recess with all my friends. And we talked what is not uncommon, what will you do in your life when you grow up? And of course, I grew up in a time where there were not as many opportunities for women out in the work world, but nonetheless, we still talked about it, and some of my friends wanted to be nurses and other kinds of people. Some of them wanted to be homemakers. Some of them wanted to go off and travel. And when it came to be my turn, I said, oh, I want to be a reading teacher. I want to teach first grade, and I want to make sure all children know how to read, which was pretty good considering I couldn't read the alphabet at the time. But none of my friends knew. And so that was my start. It was not a very auspicious start into the world of education, but I continued through school and I struggled a great deal. No one was aware I wasn't able to read, including my own parents. My report cards were fluttered with some poor grades. Again, nobody understood what was wrong. I followed a sister who was quite gifted and did very well in school, and it was hard to have that as my role model, but nonetheless, I continued through it. And when I was on my way to college, I went to see somebody because I thought, why is it everybody's finding it so easy in school? And when I went, they sent me to Children's Hospital for testing. And there I met Dr. Martha Denkler, who is pretty much the foundation of what we talk about dyslexia in the world. And she diagnosed me as dyslexic. And so for the next 4 years while I was in college, I would get in my car 2 to 3 times a week from Norton, Massachusetts, and drive to Arlington so I could receive my Orton Gillingham tutoring. I will say I can read today. I often tell children, I used to do the Understanding Our Differences in Newton, and I would tell the children that when I learned to read, the first book I read was Phantom Tollbooth because it was my favorite book in 4th grade. And my 4th grade teacher turned out to be my Orton Gillingham teacher. And then from there, it was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which I continue to read once a year because it was such a prized possession for me. And why I do it and share this with students is I want them to know that there is always a way, there is a door for them to be able to go through. And as long as I'm working with them, I'll always help them find that door. And so I've stayed in the field all these years. I am obviously certified in a number of reading programs, but more importantly, I felt that I can have the greatest impact by being at the administrative level in schools. So what was most remarkable, and this is not to garner anything other than I went back to get my doctorate. Dr. Bob was one of my references for my program, but I went back to get my doctorate and write my dissertation, and my mother was quite ill and was nearly passed from her cancer, and she said to me, whatever you do, you've got to finish. And so 3 days before she passed, I was able to defend my dissertation and come home and say, Mom, I'm graduating. So, I was very grateful for that opportunity. And whenever I speak to students who can't read, I bring my dissertation along and say, when I was your age, I couldn't do this, but I can show you how to get there. And that's really important to me. And that's because I've worked with so many students, and not just students who have dyslexia. I've worked with a vast array of students who experience problems in school. And I find ways for them to be able to be in an inclusive setting, help the teachers to learn how to work with them, and for them to be successful students. Every child has a door, and I help the children to find those doors.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Hi, and welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Carolyn Thal. I'm a parent in the public schools. I have a graduate and a 10th grader. Question number 2 is, schools are about learning, and thank you for that story. Schools are about learning. Please talk about your own intellectual development and important influences in your own learning over time.
Some of it you've heard. The one thing I find really important for students is that they have either a guardian or parent and a teacher that they can depend on. And I often find that my students will go and find a teacher they can confide in or find a para they can confide in, and they depend on us as educators to help them through. But also, my mother was probably my greatest influence. My mother herself didn't realize that she was dyslexic and had a big struggle in school. My grandfather never learned to read, essentially except the basics, and none of us understood why, and he was very successful in life. So I say that because I find it's really important to find your journey and to keep on the journey, not at the first pothole, turn away or try a new direction, but to stay with that journey. And all of the people who have been influential for me, professors in college, the reason why I wound up becoming a superintendent is because I had a superintendent who mentored me and worked with me, Dr. Paul Andrews, who has since passed away. So I had people who influenced me, and I think it's really important that we present role models to our children in the very same way I was offered role models. The one piece that probably is a little bit off the beaten track that is part of my role model was my father. And you might say, was your father in education? Well, he wasn't. My father was a salesman. But what my father taught me is when you're asked to do something, do it wholeheartedly, give 100%. Don't make excuses. If you make a mistake, figure it out and keep moving forward. And I think that's one of the reasons why my father worked till he was 81. He was on a plane flying back and forth to Europe, and I took that as an example of what I need to do in my life when I'm teaching and working with children. He actually, I think I shared this with the group the last time, my father lived to be 101, a very healthy life. And I used that, though, because it was incredibly powerful for me to understand, to never give up, and to keep going, even in the difficult times. And I like to be able to help students figure out and problem solve how to keep moving forward.
Hi, welcome. My name is Andy Liu. I'm a first-year teacher of math at a public high school in Lynn, and I was on the initial screening committee, and very glad to see you again.
Thank you.
The question is, please talk about special moments of accomplishment in your professional life as a teacher and school leader.
How long do you have for that one?
I love this question, so take your time.
So for one thing, anytime I teach a student to read, anytime I can help a teacher in the classroom change students' lives, that to me is so impactful. It's not just impactful because I'm able to be of assistance, but it's impactful for me when I see the light bulb go on for students. And as a result, I'm always very grateful for those moments. I recently had a moment where I have to preface it with, obviously I'm in special education right now. I am the director for student services in Hingham at this time. And it's really important to say that because I met with a family today in particular, in which the parents have been struggling. They have 3 children. The 3 children are all struggling. They're all dyslexic. They're all trying to figure out where their place is in school. And I met with the family and I talked about how I saw their young ladies in their family and the opportunities and what they could do with the talents they have, even though learning is a struggle, what we could do to help them. And at the end of the meeting, that's the short version of it, but at the end of the meeting, what was important is that the mother said that she was so grateful that the school had a real understanding of all of her children's needs and that we could create a plan going forward. So when we talk about impactful events, That to me is the most impactful, when parents feel and students feel that they've been fulfilled and can keep taking those steps to get stronger, to get better, to have other kinds of opportunities in their learning. So that's certainly been a huge influence. The other influence in terms of making sure I can be the best leader I can be is to have worked with some of the best superintendents in the state. So I've worked with Bobby D'Alessandro, I've worked with Paul Andrews, I've worked with Dan Gutekunst and Needham. I've worked with so many of these people who every one of them has taught me something, and I've participated in the executive institutes every summer. Even now, even though I'm not a sitting superintendent, every single summer I go because I can take away kernels of information. And then, of course, there is Dr. Bob, who influenced me to move into administration way back when, even though he didn't realize it, but what he brought to me from one class I took so many years ago. So it shows you, you might not even realize you're being impactful, and yet you're able to garner something.
Thank you. So the term educational equity is present in conversations in and about schools. Can you please talk about what this term means to you?
Sure. And I know it's a big discussion here in town, and it was some very difficult decisions made recently. So educational equity to me means every student has opportunities to excel to their very best capacity. And yes, there's special education. And yes, we have marginalized groups. But every child should be thought about when we're thinking about education, if we're going to talk about equity. And how do we reach every single child, not just a few, not just the few that don't struggle, but we reach every child and give them all an opportunity to perform to their very best. And even after that has happened, that we find ways for them to continue to excel. And so I look at that as, and I'm not sure if you want me to go this way or not, but I look at that as a real inclusive effort on the part of all the schools, on the part of all the leaders, on the part of all the teachers, because every child that walks through our door counts. Not just one, not just two, not some that are high performing, but every child that comes through our door is equally important, and we have to make sure that we're providing them with the greatest opportunities every single time. And if we haven't got those tools in our tool chest, then we have to find a way to make sure our teachers are provided with the right professional development, building-based, in order to make sure that can happen.
Thank you.
And the next one is, how do you work to address academic and opportunity gaps while pursuing excellence for all students? And if you could share some examples of your experience that would inform this work in Brookline.
Sure. And of course, knowing a culture intimately is the best way to understand the nuances of how to make that happen. But you have to look at the data, and you have to look at what the data says. So by doing that, you can see where the gaps are. You can also see where we have to offer support, either to the students directly, to the teachers to give them the tools they need to help the students, to the principals who run those schools. I am very much about the student-facing individuals who have to meet the children's needs. And I know sometimes it's very difficult having that happen, but that's the most essential thing. Our children come to school every day to learn, and we have to be present for them. So an example of that is a number of years ago when I was an assistant superintendent. I was in the town of Milford, and I had the opportunity, I won a grant to look at data and to look at student performance and to look at some of our marginalized groups and were they excelling or not. This is before your calculus project. I wish I knew about it then. But nonetheless, we were able to take a look at students' performance, their grades, their MCAS scores at the time, what classes they were taking, how many students had to be retained, what gender they were, what languages they spoke. And we took all of this and pooled it together. And we looked at each student individually and in groups. We looked at students who happened to have IEPs and students who didn't have IEPs. And what we found when I was down in DC, I was invited to this group in DC to do this. What we found was that in this particular case, that some of our students who were not succeeding in some of their grades, in MCAS at the time when it counted for graduation, we found they were taking a specific order of teachers in their coursework. And when these students took that particular set of teachers, they all missed the mark for graduation. Now, it's not that the teachers were bad teachers. I looked at it in reverse. Some of our teachers weren't certified. Some of our teachers were special education teachers who were teaching curriculum that they weren't well versed in. And some of our teachers didn't have a total grasp of what needed to happen to meet all the needs of all their children. So what we did is I came back, I presented this information to the superintendent, to the school committee, and what we did from that is we created a plan, which is what one will do when you find there's a gap. We created a plan for providing professional development. We created a plan for making sure the students were properly assigned to teachers who were certified in specific curriculum to support them. We worked with some of our ELL teachers to help in that area and had them coming into the classroom. That was a way of understanding why children weren't achieving and at the same time closing some of that equity gap that was existing in the school at the time. Now, it's been a number of years. I can't promise you I know what it looks like today, but back then it was really important to me to understand that we weren't giving the teachers the tools they needed, and at the same time we weren't giving the children the opportunity to be successful. And so we had to come to a meeting of the minds and create a new pathway for them. So that was an example. The second example I'll give you, and I'll speak quickly because I know you said give one example, and I'm giving you two, which means I'm not following the directions. But when I was in Arlington and I came in and we were looking at reading scores, and I was trying to understand why district-wide students were struggling. Some students were struggling whether they were on an IEP or not. And so what we decided to do at the time is we looked at how many parents were referring their children for testing to see if there was an issue against how many children we were recommending for testing. So we took those scores and looked at the percentiles. We looked at the different groups of students who sat in our district, those who spoke English as their native tongue, those who didn't, tried to see some of those things. And at the same time, we decided at the elementary level in particular, where there was the struggle, to train every single special education reading and ELL teacher in the same multisensory reading program. You didn't have to be on an IEP or in special education to get it. You just had to take the class if you were struggling. And it also meant that we had a larger pool of teachers to work with children, and it wasn't just a single group of, say, special education teachers. Everybody owned it. It was inclusive. Every child could do it. And we found that even though I had left the district, approximately 5 years later, those children who were in first grade, by the time that particular class made it to middle school, there was barely a child that was requiring special education services. That in itself is proof. If we can do it when they're young and we're inclusive about what we do for all children, we can pretty much help them be on a course of success. I'm not giving you a third one.
Hi, BJ. I'm Suzanne Fettersfield. I'm a retired educator and administrator. And your question now is, if you are selected for this position, you will have to select some important members of your administrative team, such as Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning and Director of the Office of Special Services. What might your team look like?
I want them all to be very competent. I want them all to want to be here. And I want to think that we create a culture that says our students are the most important thing when we come to work every day. I know that's very short, and I will build it out, but that is the most important thing. We're hired to work with our children every day. This is why we do what we do, for success for our students. So amazingly, you know, when you publish an article that says, oh, there's 4 finalists in Brookline, here are their names because MASC produced an article. And so suddenly I started getting a lot of phone calls in the last 24 hours. Thank you very much. I did have to clarify, I am not the interim superintendent. I am the interim director of student services, as one of the articles published. But I had more friends call me and say, is it okay if I apply for one of the deputy jobs? Would you be willing to speak to me about it? So that tells me there's a lot of interest out there, and these are very capable people. Now, will they do it? I don't know, but it's interesting how many people want to come to Brookline to teach. And so I want to make sure that we have a cohesive, collaborative, and friendly administration that is proud to be a part of Brookline, that is transparent in our actions. And I know that that has been questioned as to whether there's transparency. Has to be transparent in our actions to keep the community apprised of what we're doing to build that trust, to keep the committee apprised of what we want to do to build that trust, and to make sure we're finding people who want to go the distance. So it's not, hey, I'll pop in till June and then I'll retire. We want people who are going to go the distance, who are going to be here 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Just like I recently heard you had a group of teachers retiring. I did see that. I heard how many years those individuals put into your district. Wouldn't it be great if you could have your administration do the same thing? Can you imagine what that would look like if we could help that to happen and build within and help our teachers to maybe want to pursue some of those administrative roles and continue to support the town the way they've already done with some of the most brilliant teaching they've done? So that's how I see it.
Jesse?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jesse Hefter. Just started my second year on the school committee and have 2 grandchildren in the elementary schools in Brookline.
Not look old enough.
I know. I don't know how it happened. So the town of Brookline is exploring a possible Prop 2.5 override, which would be to address building deficit, growing deficits on both the town and the school side. Tell us about any experience you have in this area and how you might work to build trust in the community to create support for such an override.
It's a really important question. So I've not been in a district that has an ongoing override while I've actually been in leadership roles. I did work with Hingham last year while they were doing the override prior to coming in. And I worked with the business manager and I worked with the prior superintendent. So I am obviously familiar with parts of it. I also came to Cohasset right after they had a failed override and learned from that. Now, during the 3 years, the 5 years I was there, we didn't require an override. Our budget remained very balanced and we were able to even have a little bit of surplus every now and then. I know, isn't that amazing that you can actually say that today? So, and even this year, I had a very large surplus in special education. I'm very grateful for it because we were very careful with our spending. But the fact is, it's somewhat of a race and it's very, very political because people are really concerned about their tax dollars and how they're being used. And while our parents and all of our families who attend the schools will want to participate, some of our generations might not want to participate. I know for a fact that when Needham was doing an override and my children were in the schools at the time, they're now in their late 20s, but at the time, my father said, I'm not voting for the override. And I went, why not, Dad? I mean, this is your school district. And he said, but I don't have children in the district. But Dad, you have grandchildren in the district. That's different. Dad, I'm not making you dinner anymore if you don't vote for the override. So of course he did. But the fact being, there's a whole audience of folks who might not have children in the district, and we need to be able to reach those individuals. And so I gave a lot of thought to this because I know it was one of the previous questions, and thought, what would be some of the things I might do? Because it is very political, and it is a race to make sure we can have this happen if it needs to happen, and it sounds like it needs to happen. You have to be everywhere. You have to make yourself available. You have to have open sessions, and not open sessions when it's convenient for me, but open sessions when it's convenient for families, open sessions when it's convenient for some of our young senior citizens, or as I'd rather say, our seasoned adults who might not have children in the district any longer. You have to be able to go to some of the locations where our senior citizens might hang out. You have to go to locations where some of our families who don't have their children in the schools yet might be, to understand the implications of why we need this. You might find yourself on the football field, the soccer field, the lacrosse field, and it might be at the hockey rink at 4 a.m. because that's the only time the children can get the ice, which is why my children did not skate, because I couldn't get them there on time ever. But nonetheless, you have to make yourself present, and it has to be on the terms of when your voters are available, not when you're available. And it means having lots of communication, not send out one newsletter and see where it goes. But you have to have constant communication that is very transparent, that talks about all the positives going on in the district, as well as, even if there's negatives, talk about the negatives. But don't be wishy-washy. Don't be non-transparent. Don't say some of what you want to say. You have to say it all to build the trust and help everybody understand what you need to do. I actually thought of wearing my running sneakers tonight to demonstrate to you that I really understand how important this is, to make sure you have this happen if it's needed. And from what I'm reading, it sounds like it is. So I think it would also take part in working with all of you as the committee, because I don't live in the town. These are your constituents. So I would want to make sure I'm present for your constituents and help them to understand the importance of investing in their community and working that way. So that's really important to me. At the same time, you have to make yourself available through all frames of social media, whether it's online or it's virtual meetings, whether it is a Saturday morning in the library. You have to find the time, make a schedule, and make a commitment to be there. Don't say you'll be there and then don't show up, or say you'll be there at 9, but you don't get there till 9:30. It really is important that you keep your word and show how important it is to me, how important it is for the teachers, and what the benefits will be for the children and why it's so important for the children. Not just this year if they're to vote the override, but how it will play out over the next 10 years to help the district move forward.
Donna?
Hi, BJ. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Donna Perry. I have question number 8. As you know, in Massachusetts, we are all faced with fiscal challenges. Please talk about your experiences in addressing these fiscal challenges.
Sorry, just need a little bit of a sip. So even this year, working in the district I'm working in, we might have had a surplus in some of our work, but I still had to make some challenging decisions and not keep all my faculty. And we were able to keep all of our teachers because I felt there was a lot of importance in student-facing personnel. And so the hard decision was to release a secondary administrator who was very much loved, who's done a lot of work, who was in the office at 7, was still in the office 7 at night, 12 hours later, did a lot of work at home. But we had to make that very hard, critical decision. And so when you are faced with some of these needs, it does require those difficult decisions. It also requires being able to stand up. And when people are angry with you, you have to work with them. You can't walk away, and there's no excuses. But for me, looking at all these fiscal crises from district to district, as I've watched this year, and I've stayed tied to the Superintendent's Association and attended all the meetings, listening to what's happening, I've been very fortunate in this particular district. But we've had other districts that I've been in that have been very, very hard. When I was in Wayland, we had to do a lot of layoffs. And at the same time, we had a lot of rollover in the front office or the central office. So we had to deal with that. So being very careful with the budget is the most critical thing. And where it gets difficult is if you have to negotiate a contract, which I believe you have one coming up, and trying to figure out how to make all the pieces come together so that we're able to offer and for our teachers what they need, and at the same time, make sure that we're answering to the community with their tax dollars, what we're doing with them. Have I ever had a huge financial crisis that I had to really cut back and remodel? No, I have not. But have I had to be very conservative? I've always been very conservative, and that's not just because I'm in this field, that's how I was raised. You raise with need versus want, and you cover all the need, which is why when I do a budget, it's zero-based. Everybody take your books. We're gonna sit down individually, and I start early. I start in late September, giving warning, this is what it looks like right now, and we're gonna sit every week, and I meet constantly with my faculty over that, my administrators. But you start zero-based and you build in. And you build in everything you need, and you look at the cost of that and try to figure out, is there any want there that you can squeeze in? And if there's not want, then you have to really go into a planning mode to make sure everybody is fully supported, most importantly, the children. I'm glad I have this swinging chair. I can kind of roll with all of you.
Okay, I have the next question. BJ, have you been in a district with both personnel and budget challenges as Brookline has? What areas would you prioritize, and what was your biggest win?
I've had 5 superintendents I've worked under in 2 years. I think that's pretty challenging. 3 in 1 year in one district. Definitely challenging. Because I've been a superintendent, for the new folks who came in, I was able to be a support mechanism for those individuals on a number of items. I realized that when you're new and you participate in the Mass Association of School Superintendents, you participate in the NISA program, they do give you a mentor, but that mentor's not with you day to day. And so I'm there day to day, and frequently I would have an administrator or a superintendent come in my office and say, put your superintendent hat on, I have a question for you. And I was happy to do that. And that's why I've stayed active in the association. But you have to understand, when you have that kind of change in such a rapid force, the teachers become very autonomous because they need to. They need to be in their classrooms doing their work. And I know the other night I saw that, I don't remember their names, the 2 teachers who got the grant for the turtles. I just wanted to be here. So the idea being, anybody would show up in a turtle costume. The idea being, though, you have to become autonomous as a teacher because you don't know what the changes are at the top. So I've been there, I've seen it, I've just experienced it again. So I think it's really important to be present for the faculty, for the families, and for the children getting into the classrooms. Even if you're not there very long, even if you've had some rotation, you've got to continue to be present and be out there. You cannot stay in your office. No school can you stay in your office. No district can you hide, because even if you think you can hide and you take the window out of your door and you put a piece of wood in it, somebody will knock on your door. So that's why I'm saying I understand what it's like to have rapid change and difficult change. And what teachers need to be reassured is we're changing the direction, we're moving the needle, we're steadying the ship, whatever acronym you want to use, however you want to say it. The fact is that we have to reassure them this is going forward, and we have to have them with us and listen to them while we're doing it so that we can inform anybody who's in the central administration or building base understands what's going on. So there's a hierarchy. Here we are in central office, and there definitely we have a 20,000-foot view that the teachers don't have, nor should they, because their job is to work with the children. Our job is to make it possible for them to work with the children through our decisions. And so we have to make sure they know, even if there are 3 superintendents, that every superintendent has their back while they're in that office. And that's, what I bring to the table is understanding how you have to remake a culture every time someone new comes in. It's no different, and I don't mean to use this as an analogy, but, we just had a big change in the Red Sox, as we know on the news, and everybody has their opinion about what happened last night. I have no opinion, I wasn't watching it, but my 2 boys do. The thing being, they have to change the culture now in the clubhouse. because they made a big change. And this is going to be a big change. You're going to bring in some new central office people, and we have to make sure that everybody in the district understands who we are, what we're doing, what our plan is, and listen to what they have to say, not what we want to push out.
Thanks,
I
Carolyn.
just want to say that Theo Epstein is involved in these decisions, and he's a graduate of Brookline High
I
School.
know he is.
1991.
Yes, he is, and so is his twin brother.
Theo Epstein hasn't been involved in these decisions in about 15 years, but that's okay, Bob. He hasn't been with the Red Sox for a long time.
It's okay. My father was a Babe Ruth fan. He used to go watch him play.
Thank you. So question number 10, in these tough fiscal times, how important are the fine and performing arts and career and tech education in your budget decision-making?
So important that the very family I was talking about earlier, their children are struggling academically, which of course we're working on, but they are phenomenal performing artists. Imagine if I took that away from them. I couldn't read in school, and I had the opportunity to trade out my PE class to go dance with Boston Ballet. I spent 30 hours a week in my toe shoes, which does explain why my feet are probably so bad today. But the fact is, taking away performing arts, somebody will be injured by that decision. Taking away technical, taking away vocational opportunities, somebody will always be hurt by that. So we're, again, going back to that zero-based budget, we look at some of the things that are absolutely required that the Department of Ed says we have to do. That has to get added in. There's a number of items such as making sure our teachers are paid every paycheck. We have to do. But at the same time, for those students who rely on the technical arts and rely on the performing arts, are those the students that you say, okay, we don't need them in the district? We can live without them? You can't do that. So you have to find a home for everything. What will that look like? Well, I haven't looked at your budget in detail, and I know it's going to be really hard, but I am a person that believes there's always a way to make it happen. And I've always found a distinguishing way to create a path for anything we've needed. It has meant, you know, doing a little pushing and shoving and myself getting in the middle of it. I mean, I've been known when we're short a teacher, we were short a teacher this year for doing tutoring. And when we thought we were possibly going to have to go to hearing, I went to a meeting, said to the parent, I'll do it myself. And so every week I would leave my office and go back into the elementary school to teach Orton Gillingham. For which the student said, can't we do it during the day? And I'm like, nope, we're doing it afterward. But the fact is, we were short teachers. And I have been known to go in and teach for a week when my teachers have been out. I had a teacher get married and we couldn't find a sub, and there I went. Changed out of my suit, put on my jeans, was working with a group of children with autism. I was on the floor a lot, and in I went. So the fact is, that's not that it makes me more noble. It's just that you find a way, and when you finally come up empty, you might have to improvise. And that's how I've had to improvise. Sometimes it's showing up in the classroom, which has been some of the best opportunities I've had each of the years that I've been an interim, going back into the classroom, working with staff, working with students, and even having a chance to ask students, even with their talker, what do you like best about school? And hearing what they have to say. What would you like me to change about school? And hearing what they have to say. Never hurts to go back and see where you started.
All right. As superintendent, who do you believe you work for, and how do you balance the various stakeholders to whom you're accountable?
Sure. This was one of the questions I was asked last time, and I'm going to repeat that answer for all of you. I work for all of you as a school committee because you would be my bosses as a group and individually. But I work for the children of Brookline Public Schools if I'm hired to be here. My job is to come in and make sure there is an appropriate and accessible education, an inclusive education for every child that walks through our door, which is in excess of 7,000 children. That is a lot of children, but every child. So yes, I have to answer to the town manager. And yes, I have to answer to all of you. And yes, I have to answer to the taxpayers for the taxes they pay to make sure that we have a solid educational opportunity for every student. But at the end of the day, I have to be accountable for what the children learn and to make sure that each day they grow stronger across a host of opportunities, and then are able to move back in, move into society upon leaving school, whether they graduate high school when they're 18 or they remain with us until they're 22 with different types of vocational opportunities because they're not able to have a diploma. The fact is, I work for them to make sure that happens.
Thank you. I think you're aware of this, but we'll be negotiating 6 contracts during the FY26 school year. Please tell us about your experience negotiating collective bargaining agreements.
That I've had a lot of experience. One quick sip. I did 2 sets of contracts while I was in Cohasset, 5 contracts each time. And while I wasn't directly in negotiations here in Hingham, while we negotiated a very difficult contract last year, I definitely was consulted over a number of pieces that they were debating for the contracts. So I'm understanding, of course, it's very different today than even 5 years ago or before COVID, how contracts are negotiated. And so much of the work comes from all of you, where I'm offering to be some of the reference for all of that. But at the same time, I definitely have had experience, and it's been all the way to my bus drivers, my folks who work the cafeteria, my paraprofessionals, my teachers, my administrators. So I have done it all, and more than once.
Thank you.
I realized I didn't introduce myself last time around, so I'm Sarah Mogdaughter. I'm a 25-year veteran teacher, and I did do 2 years with Dan Goodkens, so I know what you're talking about when you reference him. So I would like to ask, this is a question from all of us, what has been your approach to recruiting and retaining educators of color?
It's been really hard, is what I'm going to tell you. The further away you are from the city, the harder it is, because a lot of times it has to do with transportation and location. So in Brookline, I'm not saying it's easy in Brookline, but it would be easier than, say, being down in Duxbury or being in Cohasset or being in Hingham. So having been on the board of directors for Medco, we had talked about this continuously, how we would present opportunities for a lot of our faculty of color to come and work in the districts. So obviously you can post ads, there's no doubt about it. I've attended job fairs, but the best way is to approach the schools directly where our teachers are and to let them know about our schools and to give them literature about who we are and why we would like them to come and interview with us. And that to me has been the most powerful thing, because we have a lot of faculty, potential faculty sitting right here at some of our Boston schools, particularly at BU, Northeastern, and so forth. So I would definitely make an effort to reach out to my contacts in those local colleges here, and we have more than just those 2, let's be honest, but reach out there. I would certainly contact the Medco office, and I know you're a Medco district with many Medco families, and so I would work with them as well and talk to them about what some of our other options can be. But it is important that when we have children who are Black and brown and they come into the classroom, it's so important that they see people like themselves as grown-ups who can be solid role models for them.
Okay, BJ, last one. Do you have any questions for us?
I'm sure I do. So I'm curious, I know I brought this up at my last meeting, and actually, Andy, you were the one that answered my questions, so see if anybody else has anything different to say. I've been looking at the district. I've been watching your school committee meetings, which is why I got so excited about what I saw. And I was so happy for your student rep, who I met at the last interview heading off to Princeton. What a great young man, so focused and so mature. And when I got to see and not that you're asking me this, but what I got to see in your last meeting are all the students who came to the podium to speak. I have never heard a more eloquent, mature group of adolescents as the ones who stood at the podium tonight, or that night. Actually, I thought I was going to be standing at a podium. So grateful for the table tonight. I wore lower shoes just in case. But the fact is, that made me all that much more excited about being a part of the future of Brookline, even if it's only for a year. It really, really did. So one of the things from looking at everything, I know there's huge concerns about permanent leadership and how do we get that going? That seemed to be a bucket that we have to look at. The budget is definitely a large bucket that we have to look at. Communication and building the trust that seems to have eroded for the last few years, huge. I want to know what's going on. I don't want to be guessing, and I certainly don't depend on social media to get my answers. I am not saying that social media is a bad thing, so I do all my quilting through Facebook. But the reality is, I also know it's not dependable. And the best way to make sure everybody understands what's happening is if we are distributing the information ourselves. So that's why I said being transparent. So I see that as an issue. I understand that you have curriculum and it might not be the biggest piece of the pie for next year, but it is a piece because when we talk about equitable education, we talk about inclusive education for everybody. You have to make sure your curriculum is matching that, matching the needs of your students and finding ways to make that happen. And of course, the other two biggies are the override and the negotiations. So now I'm going to turn it back to you and say, if somebody asked you to order them in most important to least important, and they're all important, let's start with that. What would be your top two that you would want me to focus on?
You'll probably get different answers from all of us. So Suzanne, this is your question.
You asked the question. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. It's like an audience participation piece.
Top is getting people into the seats, our senior leaders, and building that culture of trust that the community has in them, but then also the culture between them that they, will be able to work together. So I'll just offer top for you.
Fair enough.
I was going to say probably senior leadership here we call it the 5th floor, central office. There are lots of holes right now, and there's been lots of good work that's been started, and I would like to make sure that that work isn't dropped, that our strategic plan continues, and so the burden will be on this floor. So again, getting that leadership team together, and then going out and again building that trust with what I would call at the school level.
Sure.
So those are probably, and then I guess if we went from now down to a second or third, but budget will be a big challenge for next year.
Okay.
So, if I may, we're sitting in the James Walsh School Committee room. He was a superintendent who hired me, and he stuck around here for about 14 years. And at his first speech to the whole system, faculty, staff, he said, I have 3 goals for you. 1, work well with people. 2, work well with people. Work well with people was number 3. Someone shouted out, what's your 4th goal? So I think that relationships and that kind of leadership would be critical right now.
Absolutely. And remaining unflappable while you're doing it. That's, very, very important. The one thing I've often said to teachers is we have to keep our sense of humor because we can't make this up. So while we're doing it, we have to make sure we remember to laugh, we get a lot of rest, and we communicate, which is what I've always said. When I was a superintendent, I insisted every single week, my leadership team had to be there. Had the flu, it was pre-virtual meetings, you had the flu, wear a mask, come. We have to have you at the table. I made breakfast, I made lunch, I made dinners, we had school committee meetings, they had to come, I made sure there was something there for everybody to eat. I grew up in one of those households where when you had Thanksgiving and you made for 8, my mother would stand outside and say, you need a place, come to our house. So I really made for 20. And that's how I run my cabinet or my senior leadership team. I want everybody present. I want everybody alert, and I want everybody ready to participate. And then I want to make sure they know that I have their back. So when they go into the school, they'll have their teachers' backs. If it's the central office staff per se, they need to know I have their back so they can do the challenging work they have to do. It's hugely critical. Interestingly, I came to Hingham on my very first day. There wasn't a soul in the office. Somebody had left me keys, but it was July 1st and everybody was literally everybody was on vacation in the office. And finally, I show up at work at like 6:30, 7. I'm a really early bird person. I like to go out, run, go to work. So I got there and there was no one there in the first, 3 hours. And I'm like, where is everybody? And I found it stunning that I didn't have the chance to meet people. I had to kind of go through the back door. No, when I run a district, I want to make sure everybody knows who's present, when they're present, who they can call when they come in. If there's a whole central office and 4 people on vacation, they need to know and be notified who will be there in the event there's an emergency. My phone is on 24/7. My husband said, please retire so it will stop ringing. I said, I'm not ready. But nonetheless, if I'm sitting in the chair, which I hope I am because I'm so excited about this district, and I grew up coming to Brookline a great deal because all my relatives lived in Brookline. But the fact is, we have to be excited about our work, and I have to give that same excitement to the central office, who in turn has to deliver it to the principals, who in turn has to make sure the teachers can do their work. We have to take the blocks away from teachers so they can do their work, so we can see more of the Turtleville that we saw, but it might not be turtles, it might be something else. More of the opportunities, whether it is the technical sciences or the technical anything, or more of the performing arts. We need to make sure that everybody knows their place and who they can contact and lean on to get the job done. So that's.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions for us?
No, I think that's pretty much it. The things that you're concerned about are the things that I pretty much picked out. I'd like to think that I know that I've had one superintendent's job. It hasn't been for a while, but I have absolutely been in the central office. I have not stepped away from the Association of School Superintendents deliberately. Last year, I was a finalist in another district, and I stepped away because my superintendent at the present said, you can't go, I need you, and she made it, so I wanted to stay. So I did, otherwise I would have been in Marblehead this past year. Possibly, there were 2 of us. I won't say it would be me, but I will suspect and say I assumed it would be me. So the point being, I want to be a superintendent again. I wouldn't have applied if I didn't think I could do it. I wouldn't have applied if I didn't think that I could offer the skills-based efforts with communication and association with everybody that I've done in other districts.
Thank you so
That,
much.
thank you. Do you applaud everybody? This is very cool. So, thank you very much. I do appreciate your time. I know my time is up. I will leave you to do whatever you need to do.
Thank you very much.
Turn the mic
We'll-
off.
Turn the mic off, and we'll be back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Thank you.